Welcome to the latest episode of the Marketing Rundown podcast, where we'll be discussing the new movement of de-influencing. In a world where social media influencers dominate our feeds and push us to buy more and more, many are feeling overwhelmed and powerless. But de-influencers are taking back control of their purchasing power by debunking overhyped product recommendations and encouraging more sustainable and ethical choices. Join us as we explore why de-influencing matters and how brands can embrace this trend to tell their brand story. Hello, and welcome back to the Marketing Rundown podcast, brought to you by the Social Bullpen with myself, Christian, and Drew. Today, we are talking about a new trend that popped off on TikTok, and it is called de-influencing. And it's a hashtag de-influencing. It's been viewed over 300 million times, and this trending term is used to describe breaking free from the grips of an influencer culture and regaining control over your purchasing decisions. So, Drew, what's your thoughts on it? Just initial thoughts.
My initial thoughts are this is still basically influencing, just in a different way. And the term de-influencing I don't really care for, but I see what they're trying to do with it and it kind of stands out. But from watching the videos that I have seen on TikTok and other social media platforms, these people are just trying to bring to light their experiences with brands, products that they've bought, things that they've used, and they're trying to let people know that, hey, they're not as good as you would think that they are. And that could potentially hurt a business because a business has done all this stuff, all this research, all these studies, paid for advertisement, got influencers to support their stuff, and then just one bad review can kind of throw it off. And that's kind of something that they've got to figure out to combat in a certain way. And they don't want to just come out and call that person a liar or say that what they're saying is not true. They're probably going to have to use some research or some sort of information to back it up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the businesses really need to be careful with who they hire to promote their product. Um, Also, if they're not having a good product or service, that's true. Um, that's kind of that's their own fault, obviously. But
Mm-hmm.
you can't take the easy way out with the rise and still high popularity of influencer marketing and the efficacy of it. A lot of brands see the value and the ROI that it brings, and I don't want to say it's overused, but sometimes it's maliciously used to take a hold of the influencer's audience and then kind of force their behavior upon that audience and force
Mm-hmm.
them to take action. And from an influencer, if I was an influencer, and especially if it's like a mid or a micro influencer with like 5,000 to 20,000 followers, and a brand came to me, not like Nike, but just a smaller brand came to me and said, "Hey, will you promote our product? We'll give you this amount of money, or we'll give you this incentive." I'd probably be like, "Yeah," initially, but then you build up your reputation, build up your own brand as an influencer, and then you realize, hey, this product's not exactly what it is supposed to be. Then you understand that what you representing is essentially an attachment of who you are and what your brand is. So
Right.
if they and then influencers are smart, they realize that can see through, like their viewers and their audience can see through the lies, I guess, they're showing in the ad, because people don't want to see advertisements. We've talked about this before. They don't want to be
Right.
advertised to. They want real reviews. They want real products, and they want real influencers they can trust. And now with this trend of de-influencing, which is, like you said, I don't like the term de-influencing because it's influencing people not to buy products.
Mm-hmm.
I think de-influencing can confuse people because it's still influencing.
Right. When I
Um,
initially heard de-influencing, I was thinking that people are getting away from using influencers rather than someone talking about a product that they didn't like
mhm.
or something that's not working. I didn't think of it as that. I thought it more of as they're going back to the old school paying for
Mhm.
ads on Facebook or something like that. And so that kind of confused me initially.
Yeah, that's the exact thoughts that I had, because just the term itself implies that they're not influencing anymore, but
Hmm.
in reality, they're influencing more so.
Right.
And that's another ethical dilemma that I have with it is on the influencer side. We kind of talked about it a little bit before this podcast, but what's the ethical repercussions for an influencer who had supported this brand, promoted a product, and then just all of a sudden they wake up and change their mind with the tide? And obviously, there needs to be you can regain trust, or you can um, win back the hearts of your
Hmm.
audience. But is it, as an audience member and as a viewer and a user of social media, I am less likely to trust the influencer just as much as I am less likely to trust the brand, because the influencer had been taking the paychecks from brands that they support, and now
Right.
they're talking out against them. It doesn't add up to me. Um, and personally, like on my feeds of social media and my algorithms, I don't see this trend because
Hmm.
I've seen it a lot more in beauty and healthcare products, and I haven't really seen it on like what I watch yet.
Right.
Yet that's the key. But I think it's been around though. I think that, like kind of we've talked about, like the term is popping up, but the influencing the influencing to not buy products from a brand, I think has been around. Maybe not directly saying like don't buy from. There are activists who say don't buy from X brand, but I think
Hmm.
there's just listening to certain influencers that I follow, they're not showing support for certain brands speaks to me, because
Hmm.
especially if I trust the person or trust the group. Um, there's one more point I was going to say about it too, is that now influencers, I think it might be a generational thing. I was talking about with Sam, who's on our team, that kind of our generation is like I guess the end of it, but the millennial generation, especially influencers, they care more about feelings, and so they're not willing to say maybe the like directly something to their audience or person, or just in communication in general. But like the new Gen Z generation, they'll say what's on their mind, and they're more emotional, but
Hmm.
they'll just say like, "I don't like this company," or
Right.
I don't like this," and then you decide what you think about it. But I
Hmm.
think with them rising up and becoming the influencers and becoming the it people and gaining the followers, brands really need to be careful with making sure that their services and products are tied in with their culture, and they're honest and authentic and all the good
Hmm.
buzzwords in marketing. But two is hiring and partnering with the right influencers who have their own moral and ethical reputation. Because there's, I mean, we could break down influencer marketing in my eyes to
Hmm.
many segments, because you have good influencers who run their influencer brand as a business, where every decision is made to protect the brand and to stay honest. And then there's some who just like the attention, who have great followings and can influence culture, but they don't make decisions. I don't want to say not logically, because they are probably logical decisions, but I guess they're less worried about protecting their own brand. Um, so those are the ones I think businesses have to be aware of and skeptical of, because you might have a great product and you might have a solid business, and um, everything's part of your culture, and you have a great culture and you do all the right things. But if that one influencer who, for some reason, doesn't like your product, says something about your product, maybe it might even not be bad, but they just say, "I don't support it anymore." That
Hmm.
could have terrible repercussions for your business. And
Right.
then, because then you get into especially the larger corporations, now you have to play defense, and there's already hesitancy to trust big corporations, and it's just, you got to be careful now with who you're
Mhm.
hiring and partnering with on both sides of whether you're an influencer or whether you're a business.
Yeah. I think I have two examples I think that would contribute well to this conversation. Back when all that, this may not be appropriate to talk about, but the Balenciaga stuff, all
Mhm.
of that nonsense was happening, and Kim Kardashian was kind of like on the fence about everything.
Mhm.
I think that hurt her more, and hurt her reputation more than anything, because she was not willing to come out and say that she didn't like what they posted. Like, she was just like on the fence about it because she's worried about the paycheck that they're sending her. Because I'm sure that they're. I read somewhere that she's making like $1 million an Instagram post, which is
Mhm.
insane. But I mean, like, I get why you would say
Yeah.
no, but that's not a very moral thing to be okay with or
Yeah.
say that you're not doing. And then um, the next one would be Kyrie Irving and all of the nonsense that he has said. Whether either way you look at it, he's regardless of what he said recently, he's a flat earther, and I think that's hilarious. And
Wait, the
he
Earth's
now
round?
do what?
The Earth's round?
Shut up. And he has been wearing his Kyrie Nike shoes, but he covers them up now and writes sayings and just kind of hating on Nike, which I understand they dropped him and because of what he had said or whatever. And
Mhm.
to each their own. You're your own person. You have your own opinions. I'm not saying I agree with him, but
Mhm.
or disagree with him, but he is obviously carrying a big fan base, because I know a lot of people that Kanye is very similar to him. There's a lot of
Mhm.
people who still like Kanye regardless of what he says, and whether you like him or not, you know who he is. He's in the news, and Adidas has they initially quit their partnership, and then they're like, "Oh my god, we've got 1.2 billion shoes in circulation and in our warehouses. We have to sell them, so let's just partner back up with him, give him what he wants." And so you kind of back yourself into a corner. And I don't know if de-influencing is that, if this is a type of de-influencing, but that was kind of building off of your talk about the relationships that businesses have with certain influencers or other people just kind of around the world, and two pretty big examples, I think, of knowing who you're partnering with and making sure that they use your product. Because I mean, Kim Kardashian could not care less if we have a drink business and she doesn't even like the drinks, but if we give her
Mhm.
$1 million to post it, she's going to post it and pretend like she
Yeah.
likes it. So
Yeah. And I want to clarify too is that the influencing and then like influencing just the terms, it doesn't just apply to influencers like in the traditional
mhm,
sense. Like I don't think Kim Kardashian's an influencer. Maybe one at one time she was, but I think she's more of a like celebrity or a personality. I think
right.
she definitely surpasses the influencer because she's got a good. I don't know much about her, but she's got a business, and her whole family's got a business, different business dealings, and it's a little bit more than that. And then Kanye is obviously not an influencer. Now he influences very
Mhm,
much so in whatever way you look at it, but, yeah, it's that's one of those things that businesses need to be aware of too is even with partnering with other brands. So you gotta be careful because the terms have been around for a long time, and then everybody's talking about them again is, authenticity and then communication and empathy, and they can't just be buzzwords.
mhm,
They have to be practiced in part of your culture. And now with just the amount of information, and then I guess people who just go on it social media, because I see it's crazy to me, like on TikTok, if you just want to, like, if there's people who are out there who are just, I guess, creators who just spend time doing research to dig up information about brands or influencers or celebrities to just de-influence them.
right.
So you can't hide anymore. If you even if you don't want to be online, but especially if you're online, you can't hide anything. So you have to walk the walk and live what your missions are as a brand or as a company, or as an influencer, and you have to practice what you preach and create what I mean, it might the thing is too is a lot of brands, I don't wanna say a lot, but obviously everybody wants, if you're a business, you want everybody to love your product.
Right.
Not everybody's gonna love your product. That's why I think Nike's a great example, is whether or not you agree with their politics on anything, but they they stand up for what they believe in, and they make decisions based on that, and it's very attractive to the audience they want to attract, and they
Mhm,
want to do business with them. Because I mean, you know, they want everybody to wear Nike shoes. They want everybody in the world to wear an Air Jordans and, you know, have everybody want every college baseball team to, have Nike uniforms. But if they're not going to sell themselves to appeal to everybody, they're going to stand up for what they believe in and make their decisions based on their own company's mission and vision. And I think that's a I think a lot of brands and influencers and businesses could take a le- learn a lesson from that from Nike, because you're not going to be able to please everybody,
Right.
and you're definitely not going to be able to sell to everybody, because there's always going to be this the double-edged sword of social media. There's always going to be somebody who's saying something bad about your brand.
Right.
But if you're doing the right thing, and if you believe you're doing the right thing, and then you're, I guess, taking care of the audience who matters to you most, then it will all end up being fine.
Mm.
Because, like I said, you can. It's amazing how easy it is to see through crap on social media, especially whenever you're being sold. And I don't know if especially with the like Generation Z generation, is that they have this uncanny ability to understand, lack of a better word, BS.
Mhm.
They can just see through everything, and they want authenticity, and they want to buy from brands who stand up for certain causes, or, at least have a backbone.
Right.
And that's where I think bigger brands are gonna get in trouble, which I don't know. I mean, these businesses are gonna be fine, as long as they don't do certain things like Balenciaga has done, or things of that nature. But, I th they'll be fine, but they will take a hit. I think the bigger hits, like to Nikes and to bigger brands, hurt them more, because I just bigger corporations and anything big government, it's under fire right now. And yeah, it's harder to move in with agility. It's harder to move quickly. PR has to be right. What every phrase that they put out onto social or in public has to be, fine tuned to protect them legally. So they
I
really,
think
I
with
mean,
that too, like I even have a little bit of this with me. I like to fact check things. I will
mhm,
Google something if I don't believe it,
mhm,
and I will double check to the end of the earth because I want to know if it's true or not. And that's something that you didn't have in the 90s, in the 80s, even the 2000s, but we all have smartphones now
mhm,
and free access to the internet, free relative to
mhm,
the phone bill that you pay every month. But
yeah,
um, like people can just check on anything they want. They have
mhm,
all the information in the world at their fingertips, and brands have to be careful about making sure that they are in line with what they are portraying to the
mhm,
consumer. And that's a good way for them to get in trouble is if they just do one little thing that's wrong, it takes away that authenticity instantly. And it's a lot harder to gain it than it is to
mhm,
lose it. You can lose it in a heartbeat, but gaining it back is going to be
mhm.
outrageously tough.
And another, I think the phrase that has stuck out on this podcast to me the most is whether you like it or not, or whether
Yeah.
you agree with it. But another thing is Gary V. He's always talking about empathy now, and then
Mhm.
engaging, and kind of what I said is like people don't want to be sold to, and you, especially with influencers and promoted posts and advertisements, especially on TikTok, seeing this promoted post, I would love to know how many people watch promoted posts. And I just I can't I can't imagine who, and
I've
it's
seen people like promoting just like random, like their own, like them singing along, like lip syncing to a song, but
yeah,
promoting them. I'm like, that's doesn't make sense. Why
and
would you spend money on that?
I don't know if it's just me, but it seems like I always accidentally like those posts, because I guess I'm trying to scroll so fast and I like it and have to scroll back and unlike it. But Gary V, he talks about jab, 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 right hook, and
Mhm.
he wrote that book in like 2014 or something. But it's a concept that I think brands really need to hear now, is they have to provide value and good value and engaging value with to their audience. It's a symbiotic relationship. You cannot
Right.
sell to them 24/7. And with influencers, that's kind of, I don't want to say that's their job, like influencer marketing. That's what historically it has been. It's that they X X business partners with X influencer to get X influencers audience because they have a big following and have, good engagement, and they can sway them to be part of the X business's brand and buy their
Mhm.
products. It's not that anymore because as we see with this trend, influencers are fighting back per se. And now it's not even that they're just not influencing, that they're just not supporting, they're speaking out about it. So brands have to be intentional with their own engagement and creating value and content and um, just being engaging relative to their audience and relative to the audience that they want to attract from like the influencer that they want to partner with. It's important to be engaging and being
Mhm.
empathetic. I mean, yeah,
Right.
businesses, yes, they are an entity, but there's humans behind the business. There's humans on both sides. So, are obviously at larger corporations, um, it's harder to, I guess, be empathetic because people, if GE said, we care about people, it's like, okay, good for you. It's like I
Mhm.
don't, I get it, but I don't believe that. Now
I feel
it'd
like
be,
that's something that they're like, "We gotta say this,"
yeah,
or, like, they feel
yeah,
obligated to say something
yeah.
like that.
Now with like a Patagonia, who's a great example of being empathetic and just authentic and transparent, is they ran a campaign. I think it's still up too. It's like they like don't buy our sweatshirts, and they have trackers of how like the pollution they have or carbon footprint and the state sustainability, like the harmful what how much harm their products do to the environment. It's like that's then they're de-influencing their own brand,
Mhm.
but that authenticity and that transparency worked differently and attracted more people because people believed it. People
Right.
believed. And it's not just because they did that. I mean, they spent countless years, and they were founded on this idea that they want to make more sustainable clothing for initially rock climbers and outdoorists. But um, so they had built up enough trust, and then that was kind of just like icing on cake, where it's like they're telling people not to buy their own clothes. And they weren't doing it in a way to be like, "Don't buy our clothes." So then it's reverse psychology. I was like, "Well, I'm gonna buy it." No, they're doing it, and they show like how harmful it is to the environment because their main audience is environmentalists, outdoorsy people, and obviously they're very environmentally conscious. And I mean, it could have backfired, but they just stuck to what they knew and what they believed in, and it
Mhm.
worked out. So, man, that's a great, um, I guess, example of empathy. And it's just knowing culture and just knowing people.
Yeah. I think yeah, just understanding what your customer what they care about, and they obviously know who's buying their products, like you just said, and they are trying to make sure that they are knowledgeable about the products that they sell, that they are targeting the market that they're looking for. And it sounds like they do a good job of that. I mean, I know they're saying don't buy it. And
Mhm,
when you said don't buy it, I immediately thought, like, is that a reverse psychology thing where you
mhm,
tell someone oh, you don't need this, but then that makes you want it? Something
mhm.
like that.
Yeah.
But it's obviously not if they're creating products that are, I guess they're right in their market. Honestly, if they're creating
Mhm,
those products that they care about and that they desire, and then they know they're being transparent about their stuff, because you don't want to be that company that says, "Oh, we don't make our stuff in China
mhm,
or whatever Asian country where they pay pennies on the dollar," and then you end up making your stuff there and you lie about it, and then you
mhm,
lose all credibility. And I think Patagonia was a good example for that too. Um, just because that's like a very niche brand. I feel like
mhm,
I'm not a big Patagonia guy, but I do know I have a jacket because it keeps me warm. I don't,
mhm.
I'm not really big on the. I'm not a big outdoorsy guy. I'm allergic to
No,
the earth. And then, um, but off the top of my head, I can't think. Like maybe Tom's. I think they did. If you bought a
Mhm.
pair of shoes, they gave a pair to
Yeah,
somebody,
they
and
still
after
do
that,
that, yeah.
I thought that was probably a good example. And then I can't think of any others off the top of my head, but like stuff like that, and kind of what you're talking about with empathy. Most people they'll get behind your brand if you're actually doing it for something other than just pure profit.
Mhm.
And these big companies that you're talking about, Nike, for example, could do the same thing. They could be donating shoes.
Mhm.
I would love to know the amount of shoes that they make that have a small defect and they just don't sell them.
Mhm.
And if they could just give those to, I'm sure they do something like that. Haven't done enough
Yeah.
research, but I'm spitballing. But
Yeah. It's
but
kinda like, they handled and I really don't wanna talk about this too much because I've forgotten a lot of it, but how they handled the crisis with their labor in China,
uh huh,
um, they just faced it. I don't remember if they hid it for a while or they didn't. I forgot what I mean, I've read the books, but they kind of just owned up to it,
yeah,
and they realized that they did wrong, and, it took pressure from outside sources, and that's what's gonna happen with these influencers that are
right.
de-influencing, is that I think that's another good case study from Nike is that they just owned up to it, and they took measures to fix it, and it wasn't gonna be an overnight fix, and it the world, as Rocky Balboa said, "The world's not all sunshine and rainbows. It's a very mean and nasty place." So,
In a nasty place.
consumers have to realize that, and I think this is on American consumers as well, is, like, understanding who you're buying from,
Hmm.
and I mean, if you really wanna know who you're buying from and do research and you wanna act all high and mighty, you're gonna be very disappointed,
Right.
because a lot of our products are made and distributed and in ways that we, I guess, would not think is ethical. And it's just, I hate to say it, it's just how it is though. But if there's an alternative, I mean, that's going to disrupt markets. But as right now, there's no alternative. Same thing with like cell phones and
Hmm.
lithium batteries. And uh, it's a very, that's where the influencing gets tricky too, is people can, I think there goes from influencing, then there's activism, or de-influencing, and then there's activism. Um, I think de-influencing is more at the surface level, whereas activism tries to get to the core root of the problem, and they both are effective in their own ways or ineffective. But
Hmm.
it's just brands have to be authentic and transparent. I mean, I know that's the buzzwords, and I know people beat that home, and I know every brand says, they're authentic and they're transparent and they care about their employees and their people. But
Hmm.
like I said, people can see through it. But what do you think this means for influencer marketing in the future?
I honestly don't think it's going to affect it too much because I still think influencer marketing is such a big thing for brands right now that it's not going to put a huge dent into it. And I don't think it'll eventually take it down or anything like that. But with how social media is these days and really everything other than be real, you can basically be transparent. You can appear transparent
Mhm,
on things. And kind of going back to the Kim Kardashian example, she could say she uses something every day, whether it's like a makeup, she wears this brand every day or whatever. She can say that and she can take as many takes as she wants to make it sound like she's authentic as she can be, but then she probably doesn't have anything of
yeah,
that brand. You know what I mean? And so I don't know how you can get away from that. And I don't know how influencers will be affected because they can essentially lie and they can pretend to be authentic, which is not fun, but
mhm,
and I just don't see the influencing being a thing that I I bet like it has affected maybe 5% of purchases, I would
mhm,
say, because the video that I watched, she was mainly talking about saving money. Like you don't need this, you don't need this, you don't need this. Like I promise you, you don't need all this stuff, and
mhm.
it's a lot harder to say no to getting new things than it is to say yes. Because
Was that the Dyson video?
yeah,
So here's my thought on that, is that Dyson is, if and this is for a lot of brands. This is why I want to talk about something too after this, not after this podcast, but after that, make this point is that Dyson is not. If you're thinking about buying a $40 product from Amazon, oh, if you're contemplating it, the Dyson product, that's not Dyson's audience. They want the people who want to buy and be a part of the Dyson club. So yes, they might lose, like you said, 5%, but out of those, out of the 100% of people who were seeing this influencer's video, probably only 2 or 3% were actually going to buy, and probably 15% were considering it. Whereas the other, 70 some percent is like are just there to be a part of this influencer's culture.
Right.
And that's where these influencers have been paid by these companies. That's why it's important to select the right influencers and the right audience, because you don't want to have an audience who likes coffee and you're trying to sell tea. Yeah, they like coffee and it's kind of related, but if they like coffee so much, they're not going to buy your tea, even if you have an influencer who's telling you to buy your tea. It's not how it
Right.
goes. But I mean, the Dyson example, like, yeah, I mean, maybe they're going to buy Amazon products, but that's Amazon's probably more for them anyways.
Right.
But I was going to say, about like advertising, you don't see Ferrari advertise
Mm,
if I'm watching, I don't watch TV, but say I'm watching YouTube and watching a March Madness game, watching Tennessee lose to FAU. I'm
it's
not going to
so
see a
you
Ferrari
you can't
commercial.
do that in there today. Come on.
I'm not going to see a Ferrari commercial because that's not their market.
Right.
So I think that will hurt the influencer more, especially if this trend blows up to more than the healthcare and beauty products, and then um, that kind of atmosphere. Whereas if it becomes, I think the trend of de-influencing and like influencing not to buy products is going to be here to stay. But
Mhm.
I mean, just from a gut feeling, I feel that there's going to be a trend to be trendy by being a de-influencer. If you know what I'm saying.
Yeah,
Like
I
like
little
there's
bit.
gonna like in this, I think this goes back to the two segments that I broke down, where you have the one influencer who see their business, or they're influencer as a brand and a business, and then the
Mhm.
other is the social media influencer who just is about followers and the clout, and who still might have great followings.
Right.
I see those people hopping on this trend and calling out brands, and yes, it might. I mean, you might have a million followers, and you have, let's say, 800,000 say like, oh, we hate Kingsport Nutrition.
Easy.
Well, it's like, maybe you're not our audience in general in anyways.
Yeah.
So i th- I feel like there's going to be a trend where it's going to be trendy to speak out about, especially with like Gen Z, like we were talking about. It's like they're gonna they love that kind of stuff, is where they're speaking out
Mhm.
and like taking a stand. And I mean, it might hurt a business, but really, I mean, it's about audience too. You have to sell to your audience.
That kinda gets into a dangerous slippery slope of like no one's perfect. No one is gonna do the right thing every single
Mhm,
time, and no one's doing what they're saying that they're doing 100% of the time. It
mhm.
could be, but like, at what
It
point does that stop? And what point
mhm.
do you draw the line and be like, "Listen, yeah, we messed up," or, whatever, but or we thought at the moment this was the right decision, but hindsight, it wasn't, but we're getting
It is there history. Okay, that's why I love books, because history will repeat itself. Ev- just it's a fact, and it's kind of, this is not anyways anywhere near the Salem witch trials or the French Revolution, but this is, I mean, this is what happened is, like, people in Salem were saying, "Oh, she's a witch," and then they'd kill her. And she's a
right.
witch, and they kill her. And then it turns out, like, the people who were saying that these people are witches are now being called witches, and they're being killed. Same thing with the French Revolution, is they were, the red, not Red Terror, right? I think it was Red Terror. I don't know. Red Terror was Soviet Union. Anyways, but like Maximilian Robespierre was leading this, and he was, speaking out, and they're executing people, and then he gets his head cut off. and I'm gonna have to censor that because he
Get
gets
his head bleeped off.
he gets unalived. Um, so I don't obviously influencers are not going to be killed or
Mhm.
unalived, but it's going to happen to them, especially these influencers and celebrities who call out and try to de-influence, and they might be successful 7 out of 10 times, and that's great in baseball, and that's a great statistic. But
Mhm.
that eighth could be or that 11th time, or it just takes one misstep to have everybody turn around and start calling you out, especially if this trend takes off. And that's where the authenticity and picking your battles and
Yeah.
just being true to yourself. Because I mean,
This makes
if
me think of you're talking about history, so this made me
yeah,
think of the I think it was a meme, and it's like the high school girl that's tweeting about how bad socialism is while she sips her Starbucks coffee, or how
mhm,
good socialism is while she sips her Starbucks coffee, and it's
mhm,
tweeting about it on her iPhone, and it says "sent from
mhm,
iPhone."
yeah,
That's what makes me like. It's kind of hypocritical sometimes, and
mhm,
that just made me think of that with this one thing is so bad, but I use it anyway because
mhm,
I like it,
mhm,
or this
yeah,
company sucks, or Apple gets their stuff from China, but whatever, you know what I'm
yeah,
saying, and
yes,
it's
yes,
that just reminded me of that, and I always think that's funny when I see it because people
yeah.
kind of just maybe don't even understand what they're complaining about.
I think that's it. And I don't know if it's a sad point, but a lot of the influencers, or now like anybody can be an influencer now. I
Mhm.
mean people's videos blow up and go viral if they're engaging and attractive. And then there's certain portions of people, I don't want to say in the world, but in America for sure, who will believe what they see on TikTok. Now, it's not a
Right.
great percent. And then there's another percentage of people who just don't care enough, but they might say they don't care, but it's still in the back of their brain. It's like, oh, well, this person who has a verified name said this, and it was like, okay, now if I
Yeah.
have if a choice between X and then Y, they said X is not good, so I'll just go ahead and get Y.
Hmm.
Add that up over a certain amount of time and a certain amount of individuals, that will put a dent in a business. But right, and influencers have to be careful as well and play their cards right, because it is a game. I think it is a game. I mean, it is reality and it is
Hmm.
business. It's business. It's not everything's fairy tales and rainbows and fluffy.
Right.
They are businesses, and brands have to protect their business, and then influencers will have to protect their business. And I guess another important point that is not just in influencer marketing is don't take the easy way initially. My dog's
Hmm.
trying to say hey. Don't take the quick buck, and don't try to make a quick sale because you're going to be found out very quickly. And that's where these brands come into is like there's these influencers that I follow and they make fun of it now. Um, they're called the Sidemen, which I think I've talked about, but like Shadow Legends, those, and then like everybody's doing that, and then NordVPN, and
Hmm.
they might be good products, but now they make fun of doing Raid Shadow Legends. Like, well, if we need a quick buck, we'll just do a Raid Shadow Legends. And when they do the advertisement, it's the most over the top, like, "Hey guys, did you know you can play Raid Shadow Legends?" And they're joking,
Yeah.
but with these influencers, like newer influencers who have this opportunity presented in front of them, where it's like, hey, you can make $4,000 if you just do a 30-second ad. It's very enticing, but it will all come back because it just comes down, like say 5 years down the line. I mean, we have all this information, and we people go back to 2020 and look at, or 2010 and look at tweets and
Hmm.
cancel people now, which I think the cancel culture stuff is pretty much phased out for the most part because I think everybody's done wrong and everybody's
Yeah.
done something that they're not proud of, and then all the information's out there. So I don't know if you really can cancel people anymore, but I mean, definitely they can fall out of grace. But
Right.
I think that the decisions have to be, especially if you're an influencer who wants to build their own business as your own brand, you have to be
Hmm.
intentional with every decision you make because it will come back. Now you can take the Shadow Legends deal. or you can take, you can do a deal with Dove or Maybelline, but you can't go 5 years down the line unless they do something terrible. But you can't go years down the line and be like, well, I don't like this product because they stand for this, blah blah blah.
Right.
They do bad things. It's like you knew this when you're taking $10,000 from them to post eye cream, and it just it that that's what's going to get me fired up is just the hypocrisy.
Right. It's like everybody's holier than thou until it happens to them because
Yeah,
they've also there's skeletons in their closet too. So
Salem witch trials.
Salem
Telling
witch
you,
trials is a good example.
it's it's infuriating. It is very. If I that could be a whole nother podcast. It's just stuff that makes me mad about influencers.
To me, it kind of sucks for these de-influencing people because they don't know what work went into these businesses. They weren't there researching the product, doing the groundwork to launch the product, doing all the marketing for the product, and then they just want to make this one video about how it doesn't work for them when it could work for somebody else. That just
Yeah,
irritates me a little bit.
yeah, because I mean, look at our economic situation now. It's that let's just say that in the climate we are now,
Mm,
that Sa- uh, Jimmy, who has
Big Jimmy.
100 10 million followers on TikTok,
Mm,
and he partnered with, let's say he partnered with Amazon. Well, no, let's not say Amazon. Let's say somebody who's a little smaller. Let's say his partner with Barnes and Noble, since I have a bunch of books. And he says, like, Barnes and Noble, I've supported them for years, but now they're bad. And
mm,
then he's like, don't buy from Barnes and Noble, buy from another brand. Because I think that's a key. It's like you can say they're bad, but then if you offer an alternative to your 10 million followers, I think they're gonna take that alternative just to be like, oh, I want to be part of the crowd too. But
right,
okay, let's say that happens, and then Barnes and Noble loses X amount of money. The business suffers, but the people who suffer the most are the employees and the people who develop the books or like develop a product, or those are the people who get laid off. And so, yes, now that's if they do something wrong and you didn't support them, that's why I like some of these influencers who are kind of like the Philip DeFrancos and the kind of new like TikTok news people, because I like
mm,
them to a degree because they kind of just present the facts and they don't take sides per se, but it's the influencers who are doing the de-influencing where it's, we supported this product for years, or we support like products, and then like we're speaking out on it, but at the core everybody's doing it, and
right.
now they're causing chaos per se. Now, like I said, I haven't seen it in my own algorithms, but that's what infuriates me. And I think that it will be a trend, the de-influencing. I think there will be like influencers who influence people not to buy from brands or not to support brands based on their own morals. And I think the authenticity and empathy and engagement will come from that. But I don't think that the, you know, don't buy from, Disney. Like don't buy
Hmm.
from them. It's like just saying that might might work for a month, but that's going to hurt your brand down the line because it's always going to come back full circle.
Yep, 100%. My
But
last example would be when Dave Portnoy has a bad pizza review.
oh man.
That business is done. Or if I'm sure you've seen the video of when they kicked him off the porch and
Hmm.
he spit the pizza out. Like, this is terrible. And then it was like immediate. Like their reviews went from 4.8 to 1.2 or something. Like it ruined their like their social media presence. And they ended up like reaching out to him and trying to like, sorry, we didn't know that you were coming. This guy had no idea who you were. Like yada yada yada. Whatever. We want you to come back, try our pizza again. And he gave it a, I mean, serviceable review.
Yeah,
But
and that like that that alone like infuriates me, but that's the reality of the following that Dave Portnoy has,
right,
and especially because I mean he, not to go on a tangent about one bite everybody knows it rolls, but he had done these reviews for so long, and he doesn't just hand out scores, so everybody
right.
people believe him and people like trust his opinion about it, even though he's not a
He's not
traditional
a
pizza reviewer.
he's not a food critic, but he's
But
also being authentic and
yeah,
he's doing it on the spot. And I think that is what kind of helped them take off because him just sitting there taking a bite and then saying he's only taking one bite, but then he eats the entire slice and then gives a review, I think is what makes people pay attention to it. Because I know there's a lot of times he went to a gas station in Orlando and got pizza, and then had this whole story about this guy that had moved from New York and he went to Orlando and he had this pizza shop. And I think that's hilarious, and that's something that I'm interested in because he's telling a story, and then he relays that story to the person that's viewing his video while he's eating the pizza. And I don't know. I like watching them sometimes,
Mhm.
especially when they're in
Yeah.
Knoxville.
Yeah. There's a recent one where he finished the whole pizza. He was eating in his car. I thought it was hilarious. He's like, this might be up there with New Haven. If anybody knows anything about One Bite, he knows that New Haven's the mecca of pizza
Yeah.
to him. But
Mhm.
it's just it's all complex. This is all complex because the last thing I'll say is it really just boils down to human nature and golden rules and the tenets that we're all brought up on is, doing the right thing and caring about
Mhm.
people and then being honest. And it goes across the board. As a business, you have to be honest. I think I think caring about people is great. I think being authentic is great. I mean, honesty is part of being authentic. Being engaging is great, but it doesn't matter if you're dishonest. I can care about somebody and I can talk to them all I want and I can um, be there for them and I can show them my authentic self. But if I'm dishonest once, it doesn't matter because to build that trust back up is going to be hard, especially now where there's a lot of opportunities elsewhere for different businesses. So
Right.
I don't. Another final thought. I don't think the de-influencing trend as a trend will stay around very long because of
Mhm.
Salem witch trials. Um, but the influencing of not supporting certain brands, not directly, but saying, "Hey, support this other brand or other products." I think that will be here for. I mean, it's already been here, but I think it's
Yeah.
going to be more so. Um, Especially, I mean, as social media continues to grow and then newer influencers come about with who's a new generation where I think they do value more purpose-driven brands and
Mhm.
authentic and all the buzzwords. But I think that's what's going to happen. Just my 2 cents.
Yeah. No, I would agree with you. I don't know if I've really got anything to add to that because I do. We've talked plenty about purpose-driven brands and why they do what they do and why they are successful, and it's that's probably like the least complex thing that we talk about. And you just got to be able to find that thing that's gonna bring more value to the world rather than just your pockets. And if you can do that, then I think that you're going to be good. You're not going to get de-influenced. You're not going to. Nothing's going to happen. Nothing bad is really going to happen, is because you're being honest and you're trying to help the world. You're not just trying to help one individual thing. So I would agree with what you said, and
Mhm.
that would kind of be my last point that I would make too.
Mhm.
Just that's how you avoid de-influencing, is just by doing what you say you're going to do and buying into
Mhm.
a mission. So
Yeah, and consumers, be careful who you buy from.
yep, one hundred
Well,
percent.
thank you everyone for listening to this episode of the Marketing Rundown podcast, and we hope to see you in our next episode. Bye. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Marketing Rundown podcast. For more information about the Social Bullpen, head over to thesocialbullpen.com or follow us on all social media accounts. Thank you for listening, and we hope to see you in the next episode.